Every presidential election, there are a few policies that come out that can impact everybody's pockets. This one, though, is quite interesting because it sounds like it doesn't impact a lot of people, but it actually does. And that is no taxes on tips. And on its face, it sounds like it's something that's pretty cool. It sounds like it's going to help a few people, but it actually might do more harm than good. It can actually cost you more money than you think. Let's go ahead and break it down. So first, I'm going to explain what the policy is, how we got here, how it may actually work in practice, and there are two things I want to point out that you do want to be aware of, and it's the second one. It's the second one that I think is perhaps the most dangerous. So first, what is it? No tax on tips first started with Donald Trump. I think it was about April when he first came out and said, hey, we should pass a policy that has no taxes on tips. Now, this is primarily for waiters, but anybody who is getting their income from tips. Basically, the thought is here, you're already working your tail off, you are getting tips, and taxes can feel burdensome upon you. Therefore, we should just eliminate it, and you should be able to keep all the money that you make from tips. Cool. Okay, then Kamala Harris around a few weeks ago said, okay, I'm also on this policy and we are also going to have a policy where there will be no taxes on tips. Now, realistically, this is something that would need to go through Congress. They have the power of the purse, and there is a bill or two working its way through the House now. Whether or not it's going to get passed, who's going to sign it, we'll see. Okay, that is a topic for another day. Here is the issue, or issue number one, rather. The first thing is, you do not need a tax break. You don't. Okay, and this is not to be judging. The truth is, you need a raise. Okay, the truth is you need a raise, and that is because not saying this facetiously, that is because the median salary for waiters, and this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median is $32,000. That means that the dead middle salary right now is $32,000. It is very difficult to live almost anywhere in the United States today in 2024 on a $32,000 salary. That means that's before taxes. Okay, so that means if you got 100% of your salary and it's $32,000, that is not going to cut it almost anywhere. Okay, so that tells me either you need a higher salary to just live, or you need rent, groceries, and all your expenses to be cut significantly. One of those two things needs to be the policy, not a tiny tax cut. Also, policy analysts who analyze how many people would be impacted, we're talking in this industry, not nationwide, but in this industry, only 2.5% of people, because when you start to count who makes money from taxes, I mean, think of a hotel, right? You get the people who are moving bags who get paid a little bit in tips, or even maids, for example, but then you have people behind the counter who are checking people in who don't necessarily get tips. So how does that work, right? And how unequal that could be. Like, there's a lot of questions and murky questions that this comes up with in terms of like how that entire thing works. You have some people asking questions around, well, what's the difference between a waiter, right, and the people who are in the back that may or may not get tips based on that particular restaurant, that particular state, so on and so forth. So that's the first thing. Is first, we may just need to increase the wage. Now, some states have addressed this. Some places have increased the minimum wage, and that has helped in some places. You would need to refer to whatever state you're in, and y'all can let me know in the comments how that has worked or has not worked, okay? I'm not familiar with it, okay? So it depends on where you are. But I can tell you this, I'm pretty sure that $32,000 don't go that far in 2024, okay? It might have in 1964, right? But in 2024, it's just not going to cut it. Just with the cost of housing and groceries and gas, it just doesn't go that far. And that tiny tax cut is just not going to cut it. But here's my primary concern here. We have seen the proliferation, right? The growth in paying tips for everything. Now, back in the day, I say 2018 in this case, where normally you would have a service and then tip someone after you had received this service. And we did an entire video on how tipping had really just got out of control. But the way that it did work back then was I would get a meal would be great, I would tip. I would go to a hotel or what have you, or take a taxi ride, whatever it was, it would be great, I would tip somebody. Now, I mean, even think of DoorDash or whatever, you are tipping before you even receive that service. And you are tipping on things that you did not tip for at all, period. And it's just like, wait a minute, I didn't used to tip for this, now I am. And now we have a new term for it called Tipflation. Well, if we start to introduce policies and perhaps loopholes on we're not going to start to tip, we're not going to tax on tips, how many other industries and how many other people and how many other professions are now going to reclassify their income as tips? We know that historically, hedge fund managers and CEOs are very, very good with their tax lawyers and accountants in reclassifying and using all types of loopholes in doing things like this. Now, there are some saying, oh, we'll just put an income limit on it. We know that people get around these things all the time. And could you now be, suckered into or funneled into a spot where everywhere you go now, it's not going to just be a price, it's going to be a tipped, version of something where everything you do now is going to be a tip, so they cannot pay taxes on something now. Could that be the case? And is that some sort of unintended consequence? That could be an option, and it's maybe something that you're not necessarily thinking of, or what they may not necessarily be thinking of. But I think the biggest thing is we are skipping over the main issue to solve something that is very, very tiny. Very tiny. Because again, in what places and what cities in this year, right, in this economy, can you really live off of $32,000? Because the real issue is, can you make housing affordable? Can I live somewhere just decent? I don't need a mansion, right? We're not looking for mansions right now. We just need a basic place to live and just afford groceries. It's real difficult to do that on that type of salary in this economy. So can we find a way to either increase that or decrease the cost of living? If we can do that, then I don't think we need the whole tax thing at all. We can just say that for another day and then figure some other stuff out on the back end. So I think that is how you can cut through it and then see what it is that you want to do, with the other types of policies. Now, there is another policy that is out there that suggests that we can just eliminate all income taxes across the board, which absolutely would impact every single person, including those who, may or may not get taxed on their tips right now. If you want to know how that policy could impact you and the entire nation and how that entire thing would work, you want to watch these videos right here.